The sun was just starting to paint the African sky in shades of pink and orange when it happened. A young cub, barely 8 months old, watched from behind a termite mound as his mother took her last breath. Her golden fur was soaked in blood. Her amber eyes, once so fierce and protective, were fading fast, and the ones responsible weren't even looking back as they walked away, their massive paws leaving prints in the dust like some kind of sick victory stamp. This wasn't how the morning was supposed to go. Just an hour earlier, everything had been perfect. His mother had been teaching him how to stalk properly, how to keep his belly low to the ground, how to move without making a sound. She was patient with him, nudging him gently when he made mistakes, purring softly when he got it right. The grassland stretched out forever in every direction, and for that young cub, the whole world felt safe. But safety is just an illusion in the wild, and sometimes that illusion gets shattered in the worst possible way. 3 male lions had crossed into their territory that morning. They weren't just passing through, they were hunting. Not for food, for power, for dominance, for the right to claim this land as their own, and anyone who stood in their way had to be eliminated. That's just how it works out here. The strong survive, the weak get destroyed, and mothers trying to protect their babies, they don't stand a chance against 3 full-grown killers. His mother had smelled them before she saw them. Her whole body went tense, her ears flattened against her head. She knew what was coming. She turned to her cub, nuzzled him once with her nose, then did something that would save his life. She pushed him toward the termite mound and growled low, a command he understood instantly, even though she'd never made that sound before. Hide, don't move, don't make a sound, no matter what happens. He obeyed because cubs always obey their mothers. He squeezed himself into a gap at the base of that mound, his small body trembling, his heart pounding so hard he thought the whole savannah could hear it. Through a crack in the dried mud, he could see everything. He watched his mother turn to face the 3 males, her body positioned between them and her hidden cub. She was outnumbered. She was smaller. She had 0 chance of winning this fight. But she stood her ground anyway, because that's what mothers do. The largest of the 3 males, a beast with a mane so dark it looked almost black, approached first. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. He moved slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. The other 2 flanked him on either side, forming a wall of muscle and teeth and claws. They made sounds deep in their throats, rumbling growls that made the ground vibrate. Warnings, promises, threats. His mother roared back at them. It wasn't a big roar, not like the ones he'd heard from the males who used to protect their territory. But it was defiant. It said she wouldn't back down. It said she would fight to her last breath to protect what was hers. The cub wanted to run out to her. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to help her, to stand beside her, to do something. But his legs wouldn't move. Fear had frozen him in place. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. That's all it took for 3 experienced killers to destroy a single lioness who was just trying to protect her baby. She fought hard. She got her claws into the dark-maned male's shoulder, drawing blood. She bit one of the others on the leg, making him roar in pain. But it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. They overwhelmed her with sheer size and numbers, dragging her down, their jaws finding her throat, her spine, her legs. The sounds she made will haunt that cub forever. The desperate snarls that turned into whimpers, the wet, choking noises, the final terrible silence. And through it all he stayed hidden, his body shaking, tears streaming down his face, watching his mother die just 30 feet away from him. When it was over, the 3 males stood over her body for a moment. The dark-maned one sniffed at her, then turned away like she was nothing, like she was just an obstacle they'd removed. They marked the territory with their scent, scraping the ground with their back paws, making sure every animal within miles would know that new kings had arrived. Then they walked off toward the waterhole, their business finished, not even bothering to look back. The cub waited. He waited until their scent faded on the wind. He waited until the birds started singing again. He waited until his legs finally stopped shaking enough for him to move. Then slowly, painfully, he crawled out from his hiding spot and walked to where his mother lay. She was still warm. Her eyes were still open, staring at nothing. Blood pooled beneath her, soaking into the dry earth, turning it dark and wet. The cub pushed his nose against her face, making the same soft chirping sounds he used to make when he wanted her attention. But she didn't respond. She would never respond again. He curled up against her side, just like he had done every night since he was born, pressing his small body into her fur, breathing in her scent, trying to memorize everything about her before that scent disappeared forever. He stayed there for hours. The sun climbed higher in the sky, baking the grasslands, turning everything golden and harsh. Vultures began to circle overhead, their shadows crossing over mother and cub like dark omens. Hyenas started calling in the distance, their whooping cries getting closer. The cub knew he should move. He knew staying here meant death, but leaving meant accepting that she was really gone, and he wasn't ready for that. Finally, as the sun started sinking toward the horizon, survival instinct kicked in. The hyenas were getting too close. He could hear them arguing with each other, that awful cackling sound they make when they find something dead. He gave his mother one last nuzzle, breathed in her scent one final time, then ran. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away. For the next 3 days, the cub wandered alone. He had no idea how to hunt. His mother had been teaching him, but he wasn't ready yet. He tried to catch a lizard and failed. He attempted to sneak up on some guinea fowl and they flew away before he got within 20 feet. Hunger gnawed at his belly like a living thing, making him weak and dizzy. At night he huddled under bushes, terrified of every sound, jumping at shadows, waiting for something to find him and finish what those 3 males had started. On the 4th day, he found a warthog carcass that a leopard had killed and then abandoned. It was mostly eaten, just scraps of meat clinging to the ribs, but to a starving cub it looked like a feast. He ate until his stomach hurt, tearing at the flesh with his small teeth, not caring that it tasted like death and flies. It kept him alive. That's all that mattered. Weeks turned into months. The cub learned to survive through sheer luck and desperation. He scavenged kills from other predators, waiting until they were done, and then sneaking in to grab whatever remained. He caught mice and rats, prey that other lions would ignore but that kept his stomach from eating itself. He drank from mud puddles and stagnant pools, getting sick more than once but somehow pulling through. His body grew thinner, his ribs showing through his golden fur, his eyes taking on a haunted look that no 8-month-old should have. But something else grew inside him during those brutal months, something dark and burning and fierce. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he saw his mother's face. He saw those 3 males walking away like her life meant nothing. He saw the dark-maned one, the leader, the one who had killed her while the others held her down. And every night, the same thought pulsed through his mind like a heartbeat. One day I'll be strong enough. One day I'll make them pay. He didn't know their names. He didn't know where they went, but he knew their scent. Oh, he knew their scent. It was burned into his memory like a brand, stronger than any other smell in the world. The dark-maned one had a particular scent, musky and bitter, mixed with something that smelled like old blood. Even months later, the cub could close his eyes and recall that exact smell. It haunted his dreams. It fueled his determination. The cub found shelter in an abandoned hyena den, a network of tunnels beneath a rocky outcrop that kept him hidden and relatively safe. It wasn't much, but it was home. From his den he could see the waterhole in the distance, the same waterhole where the 3 males had gone after killing his mother. They were still there, ruling the territory like they owned it. He watched them from afar, studying their movements, learning their patterns, feeding his hatred with every glimpse. The dark-maned male was the leader, that much was obvious. The other 2 followed him everywhere, deferred to him, let him eat first at every kill. He was massive, probably close to 500 pounds of pure muscle and aggression. His mane flowed like black water down his shoulders and chest. Scars crisscrossed his face and flanks, proof of countless battles won. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight, who had never had a reason to fear anything. The second male was lighter in color, his mane more brown than black, but he was just as big and just as dangerous. He had a distinctive notch in his right ear, probably from some old fight. The cub started thinking of him as Notch. The third male was the youngest of the trio, maybe only 4 or 5 years old, with a mane that was still growing in. But don't let that fool you. Young or not, he was still a killer. He had been there that morning. He had helped hold his mother down. The cub watched them take over 3 different prides during those first months. Each time, it was the same brutal process. They would find a pride with cubs, kill the resident males if there were any, then systematically hunt down and kill every cub they found. The sounds of those cubs crying as they died echoed across the grasslands, mixing with the terrified roars of the mothers who couldn't save them. It was nature's cruelest law playing out again and again. New males always kill the previous male's offspring. It brings the females back into breeding condition faster. It's efficient, it's survival, it's absolutely horrific to witness. But the cub watched every time. He forced himself to watch, because each dead cub, each slaughtered innocent, each grieving mother was a reminder of why he couldn't give up, why he had to survive, why he had to get stronger. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about stopping them from doing to others what they had done to him. As the months dragged on, something started to change in the cub. His body began to fill out. The starvation that had made him skeletal was replaced by lean muscle as he got better at hunting. His mane started to grow, just a thin fringe at first, barely noticeable. But it was there, proof that he was maturing, proof that time was passing, proof that one day, maybe, he might actually be strong enough to face them. He practiced fighting with his shadow, pouncing on imaginary enemies, perfecting his technique. He watched how other predators moved, how leopards used stealth, how cheetahs used speed, how those 3 males used their size and coordination. He absorbed everything, learning, adapting, preparing. Every day was training, every night was planning. His entire existence became focused on a single goal. 11 months had passed since his mother's death. The cub was now 19 months old, not quite full-grown but getting close. His mane had thickened, growing in darker than most, giving him a fierce appearance that surprised even him when he saw his reflection in the water. His shoulders had broadened, his legs had lengthened, his teeth had sharpened. He looked less like a cub now, and more like what he was becoming. A weapon, a promise, a nightmare waiting to be unleashed. But he wasn't ready yet, not quite. The 3 males were still bigger, still stronger, still more experienced. Attacking them now would be suicide. So he waited, he watched, he prepared, and he made himself a promise. The same promise he made every single night as he fell asleep in his den. When the time comes, when I'm strong enough, I'm coming for you. All 3 of you. Especially you, Dark Mane. Especially you. The dry season came hard that year. Waterholes across the territory began to shrink, turning into muddy puddles that attracted desperate animals from miles around. The 3 males controlled the main water source, the only reliable drinking spot for 50 square miles. Any lion who wanted to drink had to do it under their watchful eyes or risk dying of thirst. It gave them absolute power over everything and everyone in the region. The young male, now almost 2 years old, had learned to drink at night when the 3 kings were sleeping off their latest kill. He would creep down to the water's edge in complete darkness, his paws making no sound on the dry earth, his breathing controlled and quiet. He would drink quickly, never taking his eyes off the direction where the 3 males rested. Then he would disappear back into the shadows before dawn revealed him. It was risky, it was terrifying, but it kept him alive. During one of these midnight trips, something happened that would change everything. The young male was crouched at the water's edge, lapping up the cool liquid, when he heard voices. Not lion voices, human voices. He froze, every muscle tensing, ready to bolt. Through the darkness, he could make out 2 figures approaching the waterhole. Rangers. They were speaking in low tones, unaware that a young lion was watching them from 20 feet away. "Did you see the tracks?" one of them said, shining a flashlight across the muddy bank. 3 large males. They've completely taken over this entire area. "I know," the second ranger replied, kneeling to examine the prints more closely. "We've been monitoring them for months. They've killed 14 cubs so far, wiped out 3 different prides. It's brutal even by wild standards." The young male's ears perked up. They were talking about them, about the 3 killers, about his mother's murderers. "The weird thing is," the first ranger continued, "we keep finding tracks from a 4th male, smaller, younger. He stays away from the main pride, but he's definitely living in this territory. He should have been killed or driven out by now, but somehow he's surviving. Maybe he's just passing through," the second one suggested. "For 11 months? No, he's staying for a reason. I just can't figure out what it is." The young male stayed perfectly still as the rangers finished their inspection and left, but their words echoed in his mind for days afterward. They had noticed him, they knew he existed, they just didn't know why he was still here, and that was fine. Let them wonder, let everyone wonder, because when he finally made his move, the whole world would understand exactly why he had stayed. The rains came 3 months later, transforming the parched landscape into a paradise of green grass and full waterholes. Prey animals flooded back into the territory. The 3 males gorged themselves, growing fat and lazy, secure in their dominance. They had ruled unchallenged for over a year now. They had defeated every rival, killed every threat, established complete control, In their minds, nothing could touch them, but they had made a critical mistake. They had gotten comfortable. Comfortable lions get careless, and careless lions make openings. The young male watched as the three kings settled into a routine. They would hunt together every 3 or 4 days, bringing down zebras or wildebeest with brutal efficiency. Then they would eat until their bellies dragged on the ground, find shade and sleep for the next 48 hours. During those sleeping periods, they were vulnerable. Not completely, but more than usual. Their guard was down. Their reactions were slower. Their famous coordination was absent. He studied their sleeping positions obsessively. The dark-maned leader always positioned himself in the center, flanked by his 2 companions. They slept close together, their massive bodies forming a wall of muscle and fur. But there was a gap, a space about 3 feet wide between the leader and Notch. It wasn't much, but it was something, a weakness, a possible opening. The young male was now 2.5 years old. His mane had grown thick and full, darker than most lions in the region, almost matching the color of the leader's. His body had filled out with hard muscle, built from months of difficult hunting and constant movement. He wasn't as big as the 3 males yet, probably wouldn't be for another year or 2, but he was big enough. Big enough to be dangerous, big enough to make them bleed. He started testing himself against other predators. A pack of wild dogs tried to steal a kill from him one afternoon. Normally, a lone lion would back down from a whole pack, but the young male charged straight into them, roaring with such fury that the entire pack scattered in terror. He fought off 4 hyenas another night, protecting a small warthog he'd killed. One of the hyenas made the mistake of getting too close, and the young male caught it with his paw, sending it rolling across the ground with a broken jaw. Word started spreading among the predators. There was a new male in the territory, young but vicious, fearless beyond reason, dangerous beyond his years. The leopards gave him a wide berth. The cheetahs avoided him entirely. Even the older hyenas, the ones who had seen everything, warned their clans to stay away from the lion with the dark mane and the burning eyes. But the 3 kings didn't notice. Why would they? They were too busy ruling their empire, too focused on their current prides, too confident in their superiority. They had no idea that a ghost from their past was getting stronger every single day, that the cub they'd orphaned was becoming a nightmare they couldn't escape. The young male knew he was almost ready. His body had reached the point where he could fight and survive. His skills had developed through countless hunts and battles. His mind had sharpened through endless observation and planning. But there was one thing he still lacked, the killing instinct, the ability to look another lion in the eye and end their life without hesitation. He had hurt other animals, yes. He had fought them off, wounded them, driven them away. But he had never killed another predator, never taken that final step. That changed on a scorching afternoon when he encountered a lone male near the southern border. This male was old, maybe 10 or 11 years, his mane patchy and grey, his body thin from age and hard living. He was a nomad, probably kicked out of his own pride years ago, surviving on scraps and luck. When he saw the young male approaching, he tried to assert dominance, puffing himself up, growling warnings, telling this youngster to back off. The young male didn't back off. He kept walking forward, his eyes locked on the old lion, his body language radiating something the old male had never seen before. Pure, focused violence. This wasn't a territorial dispute. This wasn't about food or water or females. This was about testing a weapon to see if it worked. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. The old male was experienced, knew all the tricks, had survived countless battles. But experience means nothing when your opponent doesn't care about getting hurt. The young male took hits that should have made him retreat. Claws raked across his face, drawing blood. Teeth sank into his shoulder, tearing muscle. He barely seemed to notice. He just kept coming, relentless as a storm, overwhelming the old male with sheer aggression and power. When it was over, the old lion lay dying in the grass, his throat crushed, his breathing wet and labored. The young male stood over him, blood dripping from a dozen wounds, his chest heaving, his amber eyes cold as winter. He watched the light fade from the old male's eyes, watched him take his last breath, felt absolutely nothing, no satisfaction, no remorse, just cold confirmation that yes, he could do this. Yes, he could kill, and yes, he was ready. He left the body where it fell and walked to a nearby stream to clean his wounds. The water ran red as it washed away the blood, both his own and his victims'. He looked at his reflection in the water and barely recognized what he saw. The frightened cub who had hidden in a termite mound was gone, replaced by something harder, colder, more dangerous. His eyes held a depth of rage that seemed bottomless. His scars told stories of survival and violence. His presence radiated threat. The rangers found the old male's body 2 days later. They examined the wounds, the way the throat had been crushed, the precision of the killing bite. One of them, the same one who had been tracking the young male for months, stood up slowly and looked around the area. "This was him," he said quietly. "The young one we've been monitoring. He's not running anymore. He's hunting." "You think he's going after the 3 males?" his partner asked. The ranger looked at the direction of the main Pride territory and nodded slowly. "I think he's been planning it for a year. I think that's why he never left. And I think those 3 males are about to find out what happens when you let someone survive who has nothing left to lose." The young male spent the next 2 weeks preparing for what he knew would be the defining moment of his life. He ate as much as he could, building up reserves of strength and energy. He practiced his attacks on trees and boulders, perfecting his technique, making sure his muscles remembered exactly what to do. He scouted the 3 males' territory obsessively, learning every path, every hiding spot, every advantage he could possibly use. And then, finally, on a night when the moon was just a thin sliver in the sky and the darkness was almost complete, he made his decision. Tomorrow. Tomorrow he would return to the place where his mother died. Tomorrow he would face the 3 lions who had destroyed his family. Tomorrow, after 11 long months of suffering and preparation, he would show them that some debts demand to be paid in blood. He didn't sleep that night. He sat on the same termite mound where he had hidden as a cub, looking out across the grasslands toward the waterhole where the 3 males would be resting. His heart was calm, his mind was clear. There was no fear anymore, no doubt, no hesitation, just purpose, just certainty, just the absolute knowledge that tomorrow, one way or another, this would end. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, the young male rose to his feet. His dark mane caught the early light, making him look larger than he was, more imposing, more dangerous. He stretched his muscles, feeling the power in his shoulders, the strength in his legs, the sharpness of his claws. Everything he had become, everything he had survived, everything he had learned had led to this moment. He started walking toward the waterhole. Each step was deliberate, each movement was controlled. There was no rushing, no hesitation. He moved like fate itself, inevitable and unstoppable. The grass parted before him. Small animals scattered at his approach. Birds went silent as he passed. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. In the distance, near the water's edge, 3 massive shapes were sleeping in the shade of an acacia tree. The dark-maned leader in the center, Notch on the left, the younger male on the right. They were completely unaware that death was walking toward them, that the cub they had orphaned, the witness they had ignored, the victim they had forgotten about was coming to collect a debt they didn't even remember owing. The young male stopped about 100 yards away. He could see them clearly now, their sides rising and falling with deep, peaceful breaths. They looked so secure in their dominance, so confident in their power, so certain that nothing could threaten them. That confidence was about to be shattered in the most violent way possible. He took a deep breath. This was it. The moment everything changed. The moment revenge stopped being a dream and became reality. His mother's face flashed through his mind one last time. Her gentle eyes, her protective stance, her final moments, and with that image burning in his mind, the young male opened his jaws and released a roar that echoed across the entire savannah. It wasn't just sound, it was fury given voice. It was 11 months of rage and pain and determination compressed into a single, earth-shaking challenge. Every animal within 5 miles heard it and knew exactly what it meant. A challenge, a declaration of war, a promise of violence. At the waterhole, 3 sets of eyes snapped open simultaneously. The dark-maned leader was on his feet before the roar even finished echoing. Notch and the younger male scrambled up beside him, their bodies tense, their eyes scanning the grasslands for the source of the challenge. What they saw made them pause. A lone male, standing in the open, his dark mane rippling in the morning breeze, his stance radiating confidence and rage in equal measure. For a long moment, nobody moved. The 3 kings stared at this stranger, trying to understand what they were seeing. A young male, maybe 2.5 years old, challenging 3 full-grown lions in their own territory. It was suicide. It was insane. It defied every survival instinct that should exist in a rational animal. But the young male wasn't being rational, he was being purposeful, and there's a huge difference between those two things. The dark-maned leader took a step forward, his massive head lowered, his eyes narrowed. He didn't recognize this challenger. Why would he? It had been almost a year since he'd killed that lioness near the termite mound. He'd killed so many since then, destroyed so many families, orphaned so many cubs. They all blurred together in his memory. Just obstacles cleared, just competition eliminated, just business as usual in the brutal mathematics of survival. He had no idea he was staring at a ghost he'd created. The leader roared back, a sound even deeper and more powerful than the young male's challenge. It was a roar that had made dozens of lions flee in terror, that had established dominance over hundreds of square miles, that had never been answered with anything but submission. He expected this foolish youngster to break, to turn tail, to realize his mistake and run for his life. The young male didn't even flinch. He roared again, louder this time, and started walking forward. Not running, not charging, just walking with absolute certainty toward 3 lions who could tear him apart. Notch looked at the leader, confusion clear in his eyes. What is this? His body language seemed to say, why isn't he running? The younger male, the one who had held the mother down while the leader killed her, paced nervously to the side. Something about this challenger felt wrong to him. Something about the way he moved, the way he looked at them, set off alarm bells in his instincts. But he couldn't identify what it was. The 3 males spread out instinctively, forming a loose line. This was their standard formation for dealing with threats, overwhelming force from multiple angles. It had never failed them before. The leader would take the center, using his size and strength to pin the enemy. Notch would attack from the left, targeting legs and flanks. The younger male would sweep in from the right, finishing whatever the other 2 started. Simple, efficient, deadly. They had used this exact tactic to kill the young male's mother. He remembered every detail. He had been planning for this exact formation for 11 months. The young male stopped about 50 feet away. He could see them clearly now. Every scar, every mark, every detail of the 3 lions who had destroyed his world. The dark-maned leader was even bigger up close, a mountain of muscle and aggression. Notch was leaner but no less dangerous, his movements quick and precise. The younger male was nervous, his tail twitching, his weight shifting from paw to paw. Good. Nervous lions make mistakes. The leader made the first move, just like the young male knew he would. He charged straight ahead, his massive bodybuilding terrifying momentum, his roar splitting the morning air. Notch broke left, the younger male broke right. The trap was closing exactly as planned. But the young male had spent a year studying this, a year preparing for this exact moment, a year learning every possible counter to their tactics. As the leader closed the distance, the young male did something unexpected. He charged forward too, straight at the biggest, most dangerous opponent, the one that every survival instinct screamed to avoid. They collided like thunder. The impact was so violent it could be heard a mile away. 2 dark-maned males, one seasoned and powerful, one young and driven by rage, crashed together in an explosion of claws and teeth and fury. The leader was bigger, yes, but the young male was faster. The leader was stronger, but the young male didn't care about pain. The leader was experienced, but the young male had been preparing for this single fight while the leader had gotten soft and comfortable. They rolled across the ground, a tornado of golden fur and flying dust. The leader got his jaws around the young male's shoulder, biting down with crushing force. The young male barely felt it. He twisted, using the leader's own grip against him, and raked his claws across the bigger lion's face, targeting the eyes. The leader roared in pain and released his grip, blood streaming from 3 deep cuts across his muzzle. Notch hit from the left side, exactly as predicted. His teeth found the young male's flank, tearing muscle, but the young male had positioned himself for this. He spun faster than Notch expected, his back leg coming around in a powerful kick that caught Notch directly in the ribs. The impact lifted Notch off his feet and sent him sprawling. He got up quickly, but there was hesitation in his eyes now. This wasn't going like it was supposed to. The younger male came in from the right, trying to grab the back leg, but the young male had fought off 4 hyenas using this exact defensive move. He dropped his haunches and rolled, coming up underneath the younger male's charge and driving upward with his powerful shoulders. The younger male flipped completely over, landing hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. For a few precious seconds, the young male faced the leader one-on-one. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. This was the lion who had killed his mother. This was the face he'd seen in his nightmares every single night for 11 months. And now, finally, he had a chance to make him pay. He drove forward with everything he had. His claws found the leader's chest, opening long cuts through the fur. His teeth sought the throat, missing by inches but tearing a chunk from the leader's shoulder instead. The leader tried to use his weight advantage, tried to pin the younger lion down, but the young male was too quick, too driven, too absolutely possessed by purpose to be caught. They broke apart, both breathing hard, both bleeding from multiple wounds. The leader's face was a mask of blood and rage. He had never been hurt like this before, never been challenged like this, never faced an opponent who fought with such complete disregard for their own safety. It was like fighting a demon that felt no pain and knew no fear. Notch and the younger male had regained their positions, circling warily. They were supposed to help the leader, supposed to overwhelm this challenger with numbers, but something kept them back. Maybe it was the wild look in the young male's eyes. Maybe it was the way he'd handled both of them so easily. Maybe it was the slow realization that this wasn't just a territorial dispute. This was something personal, something that went beyond normal lion behavior. The young male's wounds were severe. Blood matted his mane. His shoulder burned where the leader had bitten through muscle. His flank ached where Notch had torn flesh, but he'd felt worse. He'd felt the pain of watching his mother die. He'd felt the agony of starvation. He'd felt the torture of helplessness. Physical pain was nothing compared to that. He charged the leader again. The leader met him halfway. They came together like two storms colliding, neither giving an inch, both fighting with absolute commitment. Teeth flashed, claws ripped, blood flew in dark sprays across the golden grass. The sounds they made weren't roars anymore. They were primal, savage, the sounds of animals fighting to the death. The leader managed to get on top, using his weight to press the young male down. His jaws opened wide, going for the killing bite to the throat. This was it. This was how he'd ended countless battles before. Pin them down, crush their throat, watch them die. Simple and effective. But the young male had learned something during his 11 months of survival. He'd learned that when you have nothing left to lose, you can take risks that would kill a normal lion. As the leader's jaws descended toward his throat, the young male did something insane. He turned his head and bit down on the leader's front leg, his teeth finding bone, his jaws clamping with every ounce of strength he possessed. The leader roared in agony. The young male's teeth were crushing his leg, threatening to snap it completely. If that leg broke, the leader was finished. A three-legged lion doesn't survive in the wild. Panic entered the leader's eyes for the first time in his life. He tried to pull away, but the young male held on like a crocodile, his jaws locked, his teeth grinding against bone. Notch made the decision to intervene. He couldn't watch the leader go down like this. He charged in, his shoulder ramming into the young male's ribs with tremendous force. The impact broke the young male's grip on the leader's leg. He rolled away, gasping for air, his ribs screaming in protest. But he'd done it. The leader was limping now, favoring his injured leg. The playing field had been leveled. The three males regrouped, standing together about 30 feet away. They were all wounded now, all bleeding, all breathing hard. But the young male was worse off. He was outnumbered, outsized, and running on pure adrenaline and rage. Logic said he should retreat. Pride said he should accept that he'd made his point and survive to fight another day. Every survival instinct in his body screamed at him to run. He charged again. This time all three came at him together. There was no more formation, no more tactics, just three terrified, angry males trying to kill the demon that refused to die. The fight became chaos, a blur of bodies and blood and violence that seemed to have no end. The young male took hits from all sides. Claws opened his back. Teeth found his legs. He was being overwhelmed by sheer numbers and mass. But he kept fighting. Every time they knocked him down, he got back up. Every time they thought they had him finished, he found another burst of strength. He was fighting 3 battles at once, giving wounds as fast as he received them, refusing to accept defeat even when defeat was staring him in the face. The Rangers heard the commotion from 2 miles away. They jumped in their vehicle and raced toward the sound, their hearts pounding. They'd never heard anything like this before. Not a hunt, not a territorial dispute. This was a war. When they arrived at the waterhole, what they saw would haunt them for the rest of their lives. 4 male lions, all covered in blood, all wounded, all fighting with a savagery that seemed almost supernatural. but it was the young male who captured their attention. Despite being outnumbered and outweighed, despite bleeding from a dozen wounds, despite every logical reason to retreat, he was still attacking, still fighting, still refusing to give up. "That's him," one ranger whispered, "the one we've been tracking. He's actually doing it. He's actually fighting all three of them. He's going to die," the other said. "They're going to kill him." "Maybe," the first ranger replied, "but he's going to make them remember him first." The fight raged on for what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes. 10 minutes of the most intense violence the savannah had seen in years. The dark-maned leader was bleeding heavily from his leg and face. Notch had a torn ear and deep gouges across his shoulders. The younger male was limping badly, one eye swollen shut, but the young male was in the worst shape. His beautiful dark mane was soaked with blood. His ribs showed where fur had been torn away. His breathing was labored and wet, suggesting internal damage. He could barely stand. Every movement caused him visible pain. The three males sensed victory. They circled him slowly, confidently, knowing that this time when they attacked together, he wouldn't be able to stop them. This time they would finish what they should have finished 11 months ago. This time the orphaned cub would finally die. The young male swayed on his feet, his vision blurring, his strength fading. He'd given everything. He'd fought with courage that defied nature. He'd hurt them badly, made them bleed, made them fear. But it wasn't enough. He was dying. He could feel it in the way his legs trembled, in the coldness spreading through his body, in the darkness creeping into the edges of his vision. His mother's face appeared in his mind one last time. Not the face from that terrible morning, but from before, from when she was teaching him to hunt, grooming him gently, nuzzling him with love. Her eyes seemed to tell him something. "You did enough. You can rest now." But then another image pushed through. Those three males walking away from her body like she was nothing, like she didn't matter, like killing her meant nothing to them. And something ignited in the young male's chest. Not strength. He had no strength left. Not hope. Hope had died months ago. But rage, pure, burning, all-consuming rage that refused to let him quit, that refused to let them win, that refused to accept that his mother's death would go unanswered. He lifted his head and looked at the dark-maned leader with eyes that burned like fire. Then he charged one final time. The charge caught everyone off guard. The three males had been preparing for a coordinated kill strike. They expected the young male to try defending himself, maybe attempt one desperate escape. They didn't expect him to attack, not in his condition, not with his injuries, not when he could barely stand. But that's exactly what made him so dangerous. He wasn't thinking like a normal lion anymore. He was thinking like something that had already accepted death and decided to take someone with him. He went straight for the dark-maned leader, ignoring the other two completely. It was reckless. It was tactical suicide. It was also the last thing the leader expected. The young male's shoulder crashed into the leader's chest with the force of absolute desperation. Both lions went down in a tangle of limbs and fury. They hit the ground hard. The young male ended up on top by pure chance. And in that fraction of a second, with the leader stunned and off balance, the young male's teeth found what they'd been searching for all along. The leader's throat. He bit down with everything he had left. Every ounce of strength. Every moment of training. Every second of rage from the past 11 months compressed into a single devastating bite. His canines punctured through fur and flesh, finding the vital arteries beneath. The leader's eyes went wide with shock and terror. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not to the king who had ruled unchallenged for over a year. Not to the lion who had killed dozens without mercy. But it was happening. The young male's jaws were locked on his throat like a steel trap. Blood filled his mouth, hot and metallic. He could feel the leader's pulse against his teeth, rapid and panicked. He could feel the bigger lion struggling beneath him, trying to throw him off. He held on tighter. Notch and the younger male realized what was happening. They charged in together, trying to save their leader. Notch hit the young male from the side with his full weight. The younger male grabbed the young male's back leg and pulled. The combined force should have torn the young male away from the leader's throat. Should have. The young male's jaws didn't budge. He'd spent 11 months preparing for this exact moment. He'd strengthened his jaw muscles by cracking bones. He'd practiced his grip on trees and rocks until his teeth ached. He'd trained his body to ignore pain, to focus past distractions, to hold on no matter what. And now all that training paid off. Notch bit down on the young male's shoulder, the same shoulder the leader had wounded earlier. Fresh blood poured from the wound. The younger male clawed at the young male's back, opening long cuts through the fur. They were trying everything to make him release his grip. He held on. The leader's struggles were getting weaker now. His breathing was wet and ragged. Bubbles of blood formed around the young male's teeth. The great dark-maned king who had terrorized this territory, who had killed without remorse, who had destroyed families and orphaned cubs, was dying. And the last thing he would see was the face of a cub he'd created when he killed that lioness 11 months ago. Recognition finally dawned in the leader's fading eyes. He remembered now. The termite mound. The lioness who had fought so desperately. The small shape he'd glimpsed running away in the grass. This was that cub. This nightmare that was killing him was the product of his own cruelty. The ghost he'd created by letting someone survive who had nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. The leader's body went limp. His eyes stared at nothing. The king was dead. The young male held on for 10 more seconds, making absolutely sure. Then he released his grip and stumbled backward. Blood poured from his mouth, mixing with his own blood from a dozen wounds. He swayed on his feet, barely conscious, running on fumes and pure will. Notch and the younger male stood frozen, staring at their fallen leader. This wasn't supposed to happen. Leaders didn't die like this. Not from lone challengers, not from young males they could have killed easily a year ago. The natural order had been shattered, and they didn't know how to process it. The young male looked at both of them through eyes that could barely focus. He wanted to fight them too, wanted to finish all three, but his body had reached its absolute limit. He'd given everything to kill the leader. There was nothing left. He could feel himself shutting down, feel the darkness closing in from all sides. But he'd done it. The main one was dead. The lion who had killed his mother was dead. The debt was paid. He took one step toward Notch and the younger male. Both of them flinched backward. They'd just watched this half-dead lion kill the strongest fighter they'd ever known. They'd seen him ignore wounds that should have stopped any normal animal. They'd witnessed him fight with a fury that defied nature itself. And now, even bleeding from a dozen places, even barely able to stand, he was still trying to attack them. The message was clear: run, or die like your leader. They ran. Both of them turned and fled, abandoning their dead leader, abandoning their territory, abandoning everything they'd built. They ran like their lives depended on it, because their lives absolutely did depend on it. The young male watched them go, his vision blurring, his legs finally giving out beneath him. He collapsed next to the leader's body. Blood pooled beneath both of them, mixing together on the dry earth. The rangers who had been watching from their vehicle sat in stunned silence. "Did that just happen?" one whispered. "I don't know if anyone's going to believe this," the other replied. "A 2.5-year-old male just killed a prime territory holder in single combat. That's not supposed to be possible. Should we help him? He's in bad shape. We can't interfere. You know the rules. No matter how extraordinary this is, we have to let nature take its course." The young male lay there as the sun climbed higher in the sky. He was dying. He knew it, could feel it in the way his body refused to respond to his commands, in the coldness spreading through his limbs, in the darkness that kept trying to pull him under. He'd accomplished what he set out to do. He'd avenged his mother. He'd made her killer pay. That should be enough. But as he lay there bleeding out next to his enemy's corpse, images flashed through his failing mind. His mother grooming him gently in the early morning light. The way she'd push him playfully when he got too rough with his wrestling. The sound of her purring when she was content. The feeling of safety when he slept pressed against her side. All the moments he'd lost. All the time that had been stolen from him. Raj had sustained him for 11 months. It had driven him to survive when he should have died. It had pushed him to train when he should have rested. It had given him the strength to challenge 3 killers when every instinct screamed to run. But now, with his revenge complete, the rage was fading. And underneath it, he found something he'd buried so deep he'd almost forgotten it existed. Grief. Pure, overwhelming grief for everything he'd lost. He closed his eyes and let the tears come. They mixed with the blood on his face, running in dark rivulets down his muzzle. He cried for his mother. He cried for the cub he'd been before that terrible morning. He cried for the innocence that had been ripped away when he watched her die. He cried for 11 months of pain and loneliness and determination. And he cried because even though he'd won, even though he'd gotten his revenge, it didn't bring her back. Nothing would ever bring her back. Hours passed. The sun reached its peak and began its descent toward the western horizon. Vultures circled overhead, waiting patiently for death to finish its work. Hyenas called in the distance, catching the scent of blood on the wind. The young male drifted in and out of consciousness, each time surfacing a little weaker, sinking a little deeper. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, he felt his mother's presence. Maybe it was a hallucination from blood loss. Maybe it was his dying brain trying to comfort him. Or maybe, just maybe, some part of her really was there. She seemed to nuzzle him gently, the way she used to when he was frightened as a cub. "I did it," he whispered through blood-stained teeth. "I made him pay." Her presence seemed to wrap around him, warm and comforting. And for the first time in 11 months, he felt something other than rage and pain. He felt peace. His breathing slowed. His heartbeat became irregular. The darkness pulled harder, promising rest, promising an end to the suffering. He stopped fighting it. He'd done what he set out to do. He'd survived long enough to get justice for his mother. That was enough. That was more than enough. He took one last breath and closed his eyes. The Rangers sat in their vehicle until long after dark, unwilling to leave, unable to look away. When they finally drove back to camp, neither of them spoke. What they'd witnessed had been too profound for words. A young lion, barely more than a cub, had accomplished something that shouldn't have been possible. He'd survived impossible odds. He'd trained himself into a weapon. He'd challenged 3 killers and emerged victorious, even if that victory cost him everything. They wrote up their report that night, but it felt inadequate. How do you capture the magnitude of what they'd seen? How do you explain the kind of determination it takes to spend 11 months preparing for a single fight? How do you describe the look in that young male's eyes when he'd finally gotten his revenge? The next morning, they returned to the waterhole expecting to find 2 bodies. The leader's corpse was still there, already being picked apart by vultures and hyenas, but the young male's body was gone. They searched the area carefully, looking for drag marks, blood trails, any sign of what had happened to him. Nothing. It was like he'd simply vanished. One ranger found a set of paw prints leading away from the waterhole, heading north toward the dense woodland. The tracks showed a slight drag, suggesting severe injury, but they were there. Evidence that somehow, impossibly, the young male had gotten back up. He survived, one ranger said in disbelief. After everything, after those wounds, he actually survived. "That's not possible," the other replied. "You saw him. He was dying. No animal recovers from injuries like that." "Yeah, well, no animal survives what he did either. Maybe the rules don't apply to him anymore." They followed the tracks for about a mile before losing them in rocky terrain. Wherever he'd gone, he'd vanished into the wilderness like a ghost. Over the next few weeks they searched for him repeatedly. They wanted to document his recovery, to understand how he'd survived, to see what became of the lion who had accomplished the impossible. They never found him, but strange reports started coming in from neighboring territories. A dark-maned male, young but battle-scarred, appearing at waterholes at night, challenging resident males and driving them off with savage efficiency, taking over territories with a speed and violence that terrified other predators, moving through the region like a storm, never staying long, always searching for something. Some guides claimed he was looking for Notch and the younger male, the 2 who had escaped. Others said he was just a wandering nomad with a taste for violence. A few suggested he was a ghost, the spirit of vengeance given form, doomed to wander forever. The Rangers had their own theory. They believed the young male was trying to reclaim everything the 3 killers had taken from other families, every territory they'd conquered, every pride they'd destroyed, every cub they'd orphaned. He was undoing their legacy piece by piece, erasing them from existence like they'd never ruled at all. 3 months after the fight at the waterhole, a report came in that made both rangers drop what they were doing and race to the location. Notch had been found dead near the northern border. His throat was torn out in a way that was eerily familiar. The wounds matched exactly the ones that had killed the dark-maned leader. 4 months after that, the younger male was discovered in similar condition near the eastern waterholes. Same throat wounds, same precision, same calling card from a ghost who refused to rest. All 3 killers were dead. The coalition that had terrorized the region for over a year was completely eliminated. And somewhere in the wilderness, a young male with a dark mane and scarred body had finally completed his mission. The Rangers never confirmed it was the same lion. They couldn't. He'd disappeared too completely, become too much of a legend. But in their hearts they knew that orphaned cub who had survived impossible odds, who had trained himself into a weapon, who had gotten revenge for his mother, had also gotten revenge for every other family those 3 males had destroyed. Years later, guides still tell the story around campfires. They talk about the cub who watched his mother die and came back 11 months later as a nightmare. They debate whether it's true or just legend, whether one lion could really accomplish everything the story claims, whether revenge like that is even possible in the wild. But the rangers who witnessed it know the truth. They saw it with their own eyes. They watched a young male rewrite the rules of survival, prove that determination can overcome impossible odds, and show that some debts, no matter how unlikely, will be paid in blood. On quiet nights, when the African wind carries sounds across the savannah, some guides swear they can still hear him, a distant roar that doesn't sound quite like other lions. Deeper, darker, filled with the kind of rage and pain and purpose that can only come from someone who lost everything and refused to quit until justice was served. They call him different names in different regions: the Ghost, the Avenger, the Dark Man, the Nightmare. But the rangers who watched him fight that day know his real name. They never spoke it aloud, never put it in official reports, but they remember it: Survivor. That's what they called him in their private conversations, because surviving was what he did best. He survived his mother's murder. He survived 11 months of impossible hardship. He survived a fight that should have killed him 10 times over. And he survived long enough to make sure that the lions who destroyed his family paid the ultimate price. Somewhere in the vast African wilderness, a dark-maned male with scars that tell stories of rage and revenge still walks. Some say he finally found peace after eliminating all 3 killers. Others claim he's still out there, still fighting, still refusing to rest. A few believe he died from his wounds shortly after killing the last of his enemies, finally allowing himself to let go once his mission was complete. Nobody knows for sure, and maybe that's how it should be. Some stories don't need definitive endings. Some legends are more powerful when they remain mysteries. What matters is the truth at the heart of the story. That a young cub, barely 8 months old, witnessed something no child should ever see. That he survived when he should have died. That he transformed his grief into purpose and his weakness into strength. And that when he returned 11 months later, he became exactly what those killers should have feared most: a nightmare they created, a debt they couldn't escape, a force of nature that refused to be stopped until justice was served, no matter the cost. His mother would have been proud, and in the end, that's all that really mattered to him. Not the territories he conquered, not the battles he won, not even the revenge he took, just the knowledge that somewhere, somehow, his mother knew that her death had been avenged, that the cub she'd sacrificed everything to protect had survived, had thrived, had become strong enough to make her killers pay. The sun sets over the African savannah every night, painting the grasslands in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in that vast wilderness, beneath that endless sky, the story continues. Maybe the dark-maned survivor is still out there. Maybe he's found peace at last. Or maybe, just maybe, he's become something more than a single lion. Maybe he's become a warning, a reminder to every predator who thinks strength means they can take without consequence, that sometimes the ones you hurt survive. Sometimes they get stronger, and sometimes they come back to collect debts you didn't even know you owed. The wild remembers. The wild always remembers. And in the scars and stories and whispers carried on the African wind, the legend of the cub who returned as a nightmare lives on. A testament to survival, a monument to determination, and a promise that some things, no matter how impossible they seem, will be answered, will be avenged, will be paid in full. Because that's what happens when you kill someone's mother in minutes and think you can walk away. Sometimes you create something far worse than what you destroyed. Sometimes you create a nightmare that refuses to die. Sometimes you create a survivor who will hunt you until the debt is paid. They killed his mother in minutes. He returned 11 months later as a nightmare. And he made sure they remembered why you should never, ever leave survivors who have nothing left to lose and everything to avenge.